Annyeong, it's Mikey here, and I just want to thank you guys so much for always supporting and helping me build this channel up. Please don't be afraid to ever leave comments if things I make mistakes on, or criticism, or even things I could improve. Now, I want to thank Epomaker for sending me out their new TH40. So this is the first time I'm trying out a 40% board. It's going to be interesting. So let's get straight into the unboxing and take a look. So starting off with the unboxing of the Epomaker TH40. Sorry guys, you know how it is. I'm very bad at doing these unboxings really nicely, but after getting it out, we have a manual, and right away, we're gonna take a look at the accessories. We're gonna see what's inside, what kind of switch is gonna be in it. Usually they are good at providing extras, so you have USB dongle, keycap puller, switch puller, a nice braided cable, not too bad, and the Epomaker Flamingo switch. This is gonna be interesting. I've never actually tried out the Flamingo switch, so we'll see how that sounds. And of course, I like to put everything back in the box because I just don't want to lose anything. And then we're gonna go right into looking at the actual keyboard. Now this, guys, is a 40% keyboard. I've never tried something this small. Smallest was 60%, and I mean, it's made of plastic, so it's not a metal case. It is quite interesting though. I gotta say, like, it's really small, like compared to my hand. Really tiny, but we're gonna weigh this before we go right into a sound test, and this is 435 grams. So now that we've actually done the sound test with the stock and lubed, and I gotta admit, the lube does sound pretty good, we're gonna have to open this up. So because it's a plastic case, that means we're gonna need a tool to actually get this pried open. So there's not gonna be any screws involved. You actually just need one of these tools. I can't remember the exact name of this tool, but it's one that you're gonna have to use to get into the sides to just pry off the. So just be careful, of course, where the switches are, that changes at different modes. That's something that you're just gonna have to be careful of. Though I believe Epomaker actually designed this really well so that it doesn't get damaged when you're opening this up. So that's something really nice. Now, we're gonna see that it does have the nice foams. It has a plate mount foam, which is really good on the edges. It also has a nice thick foam between the plate and the PCB, and a really nice foam on the bottom. This also has a 2000 mAh battery, so a decent size for a small keyboard. Now, there is a lot of room. So one thing I noticed was there is quite a bit of room within this actual board. So I'm going to actually use my car sound dampener that I use for most keyboards to actually cut it up and fit it inside. So this is something you just have to do carefully, is measure out how much you need to do. And that's the nice thing about this car dampener is like this, is it works well. Like the installation just fits in right away. You can cut it up where you need to, and very easy to work with. Now I put that in on the bottom, and we're going to close it up as well, and then make sure that it fits, that no issues, right? We're not putting too much pressure on the PCB, and that everything works well. So once we do that, of course, we're going to do a sound test and see how good it is. So I don't know. What do you guys think of the sound after the modding and this whole board? It sounds pretty good. Now I couldn't really get fully used to this keyboard. I'd say it sounds really good though. Like the fact is, I was quite shocked of how good it sounds, and my goodness, it feels really good as well. Like the flamingo switches work really well with this. Now, this is how big it is compared to a 60%, right? That is my Wu-Tang 60. It's a 60% keyboard, and you can compare all the different sizes and see how small this 40% is. Like above is my Crush 80. That's a TKL. Look at the big differences between this 40%. It is so small. Now, it was hard to get used to using this 40%. I can be honest with you, I personally couldn't fully get used to using it. It was quite difficult to do work with it. It's just because I'm not used to it. My brain isn't fully there to actually get used to how this keyboard works. You have to really rely on that function button. It's the most important part. Now, I'm going to go into the software a little bit later about how I did some of the stuff, but just the layout was quite tough. Like that question mark on the left side is so hard to get used to. It would have been nice if they actually kind of changed up the layout a bit, instead of having like the shift on the like right to be so big, maybe smaller, and the left shift a bit bigger, just so that the layout works out much nicer to have it more closer to what you're normally used to. It's really, really tough to get used to a question mark on the left. I also did change the right shift as a function key as well. It's just, it's really hard to get used to. Like you can see the layout, right? So your QAZ, the Z on the 40% is just a little bit more to the right, and it's just a bit awkward. I think the best layout for this would have actually truly been the longer shift on the left, because it is the most used compared to the right shift. A right shift that was the same size of just a regular keycap would have been fine, I think. And the enter key a little bit smaller, and then the backspace there is fine. Now, I would have changed this up a little bit just because of those things. And then have different buttons that are available for different portions. Like the function button in the middle is perfect. That's very good because you're gonna need it often. But you're missing certain things, right? Like the quotations. It is tough to get used to those things. Like I think once you get used to it, it'd be very good. Like you can have shortcuts for so many different things in there, right? It's very common things that are used. Would be very good to have multiple layers available. But again, like there's certain things I think that is used so common when you're typing that it's not great to actually have to press function to do it. As I said, I set up the right shift and the bottom function to be different functions for different layouts. Right? It's going to have different layers, sorry. It's going to have layer 1, 2, and 3. But I think truly it would have been nicer if there was a little bit more workaround for that. I even changed the right space to something different as well. And that's just because I would like to be able to get to the certain things that I need to use often, right? And I'm going to go into the VIA because this is VIA compatible. And I want to show you guys how did I customize it and the things that you can do and my personal ideas. So first things first, you're going to of course have to have VIA installed, but you go on the Epomaker website and then you're going to scroll all the way down. Once you get there, it shows you that it's VIA compatible. And then you're going to have to actually install the JSON. That is the file that you need to use in VIA. Now you're going to go into the website, scroll all the way down, and you're going to see, of course, like all the features that going to provide, right? The end key rollover and the different lighting. You're going to need to go through everything, and they even have a nice video that kind of explains how to get it working with their VIA. Now you're going to see the download section on the bottom right there. That's where you're going to actually have to click to download it. It is quite interesting to see how they're setting things up and how they're explaining things. And it's just nice that when a company actually does give you some more instructions. So click on that link, and then we're going to go in and download it. Once you downloaded it, you're going to load it up. Make sure that you set it on V2, right? Because this is a V2 JSON file. But if you don't have the V2 turned on, it's not going to work. So now you get to actually see the different layers. So that's layered 1, and then you can set up layer 2, layer 3, and I'll also kind of explain to you like how you can go into the different layers and my personal opinions of how to make this work really well. So one thing you should do is screenshot or take a photo of what current setup is. This is something I personally did because I want to know exactly, the things that I'm missing. and the settings that they maybe have set up that could work, or maybe I should keep, and things maybe a different layer, and maybe I want to move all of this into a different layer, this would work. So make sure you get like a screenshot like I did with the snipping tool. Very simple tool, very easy to use. Now, what you can do to do a good setup for this is actually just go in and start making different changes that you think are necessary. This is a nice thing about having VIA compatibility, as well as just most softwares as well, is be able to play around these things. As you can see, like I'm setting up my numbers where right there, like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is just because I personally think that it would work better this way for me, like almost using it like a numpad. One thing I did forget was to add the 0. That's something I had to fix later on, but this is something that works incredibly well for me. I think is the function button is in the middle, so might as well just use everything with my left hand. I don't have to move around. I don't have to move my hands up. This is very simple, very easy to reach, and very easy to use. Another thing that I like to do sometimes is change the caps lock button, because I don't use it that often, to like control and make all these different settings that I think would work. And it's up to you how you want to do it. This is the nice thing about having a 40% is it really comes down to a customization, and it's very in-depth customization. So like if I was to suggest a 40% to anyone, it would really be to people that are at a point where they just only work on shortcuts, right? You're constantly just working on shortcuts. So make sure you use in basics the blank. That will actually remove everything, and then you can reset it from there. Now, one thing I was trying to do when I was doing this reset is I was actually also trying to move the question mark to the right side. Turns out that doesn't work well because of the way that the layout of the keyboard is. The question mark on the right side makes it really, really hard to type. Your usual way of typing will not work with this. Actually feels very weird, and you actually keep making a typo because the way that it's spaced out on the bottom, it does not work like a normal keyboard. So just be careful of that. Now, using the layers, right, you can put in all the different features that you're looking for. And one thing you can do is when you go into layers, there's actually a FN 1, 2, and 3. Those are actually working with layers. So that is the easiest way you can deal with it. Because normally in VIA, when you go into layer 2 or 3, most companies haven't actually set something up. So it's just still the regular letters. You're going to have to use the layer section and then use the FN 2 or 3 to easily get into that layer. And I personally think using the right shift is actually much better. So in this current recording that I did here, though, I'd use the right space button because I don't know if you type with right space, but I personally don't actually use my right thumb for space. So I put the FN2 there. I actually felt that instead of putting it FN2 there, later on while actually doing more testings, I think the right shift is better for the layer 2, and then putting layer 3 on the right space for things that aren't used as frequent. But this is just my personal preference, and this is something that I just would suggest to you guys who are looking for 40%. Play around with it yourself and see what works for you. So all in all, the 40% is a very interesting keyboard, right? It is very interesting to use. It really requires a lot of practice and a lot of effort. Is it really more ergonomic? I don't know. I personally don't know if it's really more ergonomic than using a regular keyboard. But if you are used to using shortcuts, you're someone that does a lot of, I would say, more towards design or something, you just need something very small that doesn't take up a lot of space, and you're just very quick with what you do, this could work. But I'm gonna be honest, it's not cheap. The thing is, this keyboard is actually $80 USD, which is not a cheap board when you fully think about it. But at the same time, 40% are also not very common, and this does sound great, right? Like this is something that is super easy to take around, and it does sound good. So if you're really interested in this 40%, really go take a look below in my links in the description and see if you're interested in this board. But I have to admit, it does sound good and it feels good. How will I use it? I think I'm going to use it more with my TV computer because I just can't get used to it. What did you guys think of the TH40? Now, this is quite an interesting keyboard, I find. It's small form factor, small form factor. But
but I just, it's hard to use in a full work environment just because I'm not so used to it yet. I'm still gonna have to get used to pressing FN all the time for specific things that I'm wanting to do. So, I mean, it'll take time, and it'll always take time, but have you guys ever used one? Let me know down below in the comments, and please check out the link below to see more information about the TH40 and the things that you can do with it. But I'm so glad that it has VS support, so I can actually do all the different modifications I need in terms of putting the numbers where I want it to be. I still don't like the question mark over here. I feel like it should have just been over there and everything moved over. This was not, I think, my favorite thing that they did. It would have been nice to do it, and I might actually just modify myself to move it over to fix that. So I'll catch you guys next time, and please make sure to check out the other videos I got.